Hello, everybody. Spencer again from the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel, host of Constructive Criticism and Limit Time Only, two podcasts about getting better at Magic the Gathering. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this video. I think this might be the most passionate topic in all of Magic for me. Other than like self-improvement and like getting better, there's one thing that I feel really passionately about. Today we're going to talk about the modern ban list, and with the upcoming set coming out, that means that a possible change to the banner restricted list, and this is the thing that like really gets me going. Oh my gosh, so I did not know that as many people felt the way I felt about the modern ban list. So for those who don't know, modern is a format starting in 8th edition and mirrored forward. So that's when the new modern card frame came out. And when Modern was announced, they banned like the artifact lands and Stoneforge Mystic and Jason Mind Sculptor, which had recently been really oppressive in Standard and things like that. And since then, they've banned things, taking things off the ban list, Bitter Blossom, Sword of the Meek, different things to shake up the format. And one of the best ways to shake up Modern is banning and unbanning cards. And Modern is in an interesting place right now where, in my opinion, it's really close to good, which it hasn't been in a long time. In fact, when the Eldrazi Menace came out, I was actually like, oh man, this is interesting. Maybe we should take a step back instead of banning things and think about unbannings. And I haven't changed my mind, even though they banned cards. So today I ran a series of polls in different Facebook groups, on Twitter, things like that, about what people want in Modern. And I gave them 3 options. I said, do nothing, ban cards, and unban cards. And we had about 100. It wasn't very long. I didn't post these. Haven't been up for very long. I did this morning. I'm recording this, at like 5 in the afternoon. So it hasn't been very long. But we got about 116 responses. And if you include me, who I want to unban cards, which is just one response, you have nearly 80% want cards unbanned. So you have 92 votes for unbanning. You have 17 votes for banning cards. And you have 7 votes for none. And almost all of... so Twitter not, but on Facebook, almost all of the people who said ban cards also want cards unbanned. So if they had only given one option, I think a lot of them would have picked to unban cards. So why unban cards? So there's a podcast called The Spike Feed that you should check out. It's really good. And one of the hosts has been advocating for unbans for a long time. One of the reasons for it is because it never feels good to take something away from somebody, right? In fact, you want to do everything you can in your life. Like, if you have a kid, you don't want to be taking things away from them. You want to be giving them stuff all the time, like, because it's a better feeling for them, and seeing them happy makes you happy. And that's how Wizards should feel about this. When you think about unbanning a card, you're giving something to the game. You're giving something back to players or to players. You're adding something to the format, which is a really great feeling. It's something that every time a card gets unbanned, people get excited for the most part. Sword of the Meek was one that people did not get as excited about. A lot of people, including myself, were actually worried about that one because it can really draw gains. But there's no support for it, so it really just wasn't a problem. So when you think about unbanning, how many cards are we talking here? And some people might just want a few. Some people might just say like, oh, Bloodbraid Elf and Jason Mind Sculptor don't need to be banned, take them off. And then you have people like me who are of a very different opinion about how to handle this unbanning. And how powerful should the cards be? Well, it's interesting because, like, I don't know that power level is a reason to keep cards banned or unbanned. It's different things that I think matter. So what... If something comes in, should things go out, is the next question that you might want to ask yourself. And I think that there are situations where if you unban this card, you should ban this card. Because otherwise it's just auto-includes and like makes deck building unfun, things like that. So here's kind of my list. I'll go over what I think we should do. So I do think that there's one card that could be considered for banning. It's actually Cathartic Reunion. I think that this card gives Dredge the ability to beat a Rest in Peace while Dredge is on the play that it shouldn't have the ability to do. People might say like, well, like you have the ability with different things to beat like Stony Silence with affinity with the right draws, and it's like, yeah, but like your Cathartic Reunion draws are good against literally everything. Like no one can beat them, which is true of infects like turn 2 kills, but it's a large set of cards that give you that kind of draw. Whereas with Dredge, you just need the Cathartic Union and Dredgers, and you're done. Like, you're going to mill half of your deck, and it's too powerful. So that's one that I could see the argument for actually banning if we're going to ban a card. There are some cards that I believe should just be unbanned right now, no questions asked, should not be on the ban list anymore. Those cards are Blood-Braid Elf, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Ponder or Preordain. One of them, not both of them. Should one of them just pick one at random, pull it out of a hat? I don't care. Take one of them off. Give consistency to different decks. I mentioned Sword of the Meek earlier. That's a card that can give those decks a little bit of power, like, and consistency that they are sorely lacking. It helps some. I mean, what common decks does it help right now? Like, it helps ad nauseum. Like, I just don't know that that's going to make that big of a difference. Just unban one of them. Well, not both of them. I'm not saying, like, let's have Storm back into the format as, like, a very consistent deck. But, yeah, Storm being a little bit better by having one of these cards, I'm totally okay with. And then Birthing Pod. I never thought Birthing Pod should be banned. It was weird that Birthing Pod got banned to me, as it wasn't really winning as many events as Splinter Twin was then. It's kind of like Blood Right Off. I just didn't get it. I think Birthing Pod is really good. I think that the deck is still around in the form of Coco, and honestly, like, I just don't think it matters. I think that people are going to play those strategies over the strategies that they were trying to enforce by banning Birthing Pod. I just don't think it changed anything, and you should just give it back to the players. I also think that the decks are way more interesting and way more fun and less swingy and weird and bad. I actually just think that the Coco decks are, like, infuriating. The Birthing Pod decks are interesting, so that I would just unban Birthing Pod. Blood Red Elf, for obvious reasons, I just don't think the card should have ever been banned. I never thought it was too good. I think it's a fair magic card that just didn't deserve to get banned. Jace the Mind Sculptor, I think, is in a spot where you can unban it. I don't think that, like, things like Jeskai Control and Scapeshift are going to get too good if Jace the Mind Sculptor's in the format. Yeah, it gives Scapeshift decks, like, a real win condition outside of Scapeshift. It gives the Jeskai decks, like, a real win condition and, like, this dig and, like, this very powerful effect, but, like, let's just let them have it. I don't understand, like, the hatred of Control is just out of hand. I think Control is good for formats, and having permission decks is good, and I think that we should start to do more to incorporate those decks into the format. Next up are cards that we might consider taking off the ban list. Not necessarily, like, these should just come off, but here are the cards that I think we should consider maybe trying them out again, because the format's gotten really powerful. I mean, you look at Infect, Death Shadow, Aggro, even the burn decks are, like, way better than they used to be. So, like, aggressive decks have gotten really good, and then combo decks are also really powerful. I mean, Ad Nauseam's, like, legitimately, like, up there as far as, like, good decks. You have different decks that have all gotten more powerful cards and, like, become more consistent. And so because of that, I wonder if we can take a few cards back off the ban list. One card that never really saw Modern play, but I still got banned, is Dig Through Time. I understand why they did it. They were worried that the decks that were playing Treasure Cruise were just going to switch to Dig Through Time, and that it wouldn't change the format. I actually don't know that that's true, and I would consider taking off Dig Through Time and giving these Control decks, these Jeskai decks, and these Scapeshift decks something other than Jace the Mind Sculptor to, like, really give them power. I think it's okay. I think that the decks are so blazing fast in this format that Dig Through Time is okay to have. Now, it could be that, like, maybe some of these blazing fast decks change to be able to play Dig Through Time, and I'm just wrong, but that's one that I would consider taking off. Next up, Deathrite Shaman. So, don't get me wrong. My favorite deck in Modern, like, for a long time was Jund. Obviously, I would want Deathrite Shaman off. Here's the real reason, though. I think that Deathrite Shaman is, like, this really important safety valve that Modern doesn't have, that, like, Legacy has. So I think having cards like Deathrite Shaman that are, like, keep you in check is like, no, dude, you just can't do this, and then, because you might run into, like, 6 Deathrite Shaman decks. I think it's okay, because those decks can still exist, like Belcher and things like that in Legacy, but I think that Deathrite Shaman would help keep things more honest in Modern, and we might want to try again to take that off. Especially if we're not banning Cathartic Reunion. I think that Deathrite Shaman gives lots of different decks a shot that don't currently have a shot in this world. I mean, including, like, Birthing Pod and Jund. Then the next card that we might consider taking off, and this is the one that I think gets into, like, if you unban this, you have to ban something else, is actually Stoneforge Mystic. So I've seen a lot of people say that Stoneforge Mystic and Jit should be unbanned, and that's basically the opposite direction in which I would go. I think that if you unban Stoneforge Mystic, you have to ban Batterskull, and then just let them play with their like swords of Feast and Famines and Light and Shadows and things like that, different sword options. Because what I think that does is it gives white decks the power rather than control decks the power. When you have your win condition be Stoneforge Mystic Batterskull, I actually think that turns it into a control deck, which I don't think is where you want Stoneforge Mystic in Modern. I think you want it in like white aggressive decks that can go grab equipment and like punch through, which Batterskull does in those decks, but it also does it in the control decks. So I would ban Batterskull and unban Stoneforge Mystic, and I would definitely not unban Jet. I think that would be bad for the format. And those are like the massive change. And I think all of these happening at once would just completely change the format. It would be a whole new format. It would be really exciting. It would almost be like people are really big advocates of Frontier right now. And I think that this massive unbanning basically creates a brand new format that needs to be figured out. And can be tinkered with that will do the same thing for Wizards. They already have a format that a lot of people are invested in and a lot of people love. Why create a brand new format rather than just add to the format you already have in a massive way? So what is Wizards doing right with this format? Because Wizards gets a lot of crap for Modern. And I think one of the huge things that Wizards is doing right is they removed the Pro Tour. I think that's a good thing. I think the Modern Pro Tour sucked. Not nobody. Some people really liked watching it, but a lot of people didn't like watching it. I think the players were miserable. I think that it wasn't that exciting. Oftentimes one strategy really dominated. And then people just started calling for bannings. And it was almost like this, like, everybody let's get together and like see what's going to get banned, and like this big negative feeling. I think it wasn't actually that fun. I actually think it was legitimately unfun. I think it was this negative feeling that everybody clinged together and like, man, it's so much negativity. I don't even want to talk about it much, but I think removing the Pro Tour was a very good thing that Wizards did. So thank you to Wizards for doing that. So what should Wizards still try and do to change things? So the huge ban list, the huge unbanning is something that I would definitely advocate for. Just start unbanning massive amounts of cards, shake up the format in a big way, bring the power level of Modern up rather than keep trying to push it down. And when you do that, I think it gives you a lot. Now they might not want to do that because of where Standard is, but I think it's better for the format. Where they should focus. So, a few things. The first thing that I would do is get rid of Modern PPTQs. They're the worst. Nobody enjoys them other than Modern players who don't play in other PPTQs. They do it because they want more Modern events to play in, which is an easy fix. More Modern GPs. And like you just did a Standard Showdown thing, do stuff like that for Modern. Don't make it this path to the Pro Tour where you're not going to play Modern anyway. Do it in other ways. More Modern GPs, more Legacy GPs. Do more Eternal coverage outside of the Pro Tour and outside of the PPTQ scene. Your job is to sell cards. Go do that with Standard. That it is a great way to do that. But don't bring Modern and Legacy into that. But do showcase those formats more than you do. There have been 3 Legacy GPs that aren't covered. That's crazy. You absolutely should be doing coverage of Legacy GPs and do more Modern and Legacy GPs. And then try and have the community push the format. You have this huge player base that's very passionate about your game. You have things like the Vintage Super League that really made Vintage relevant on some level. And there are good Modern and good Legacy podcasts. Constructive Criticism covers Modern, Legacy, and Standard. Reach out to your content creators and have them push these things for you. Sponsor it. Like, this is brought to you by Wizards of the Coast. That'd be a huge thing that you can be doing. Like Leaving a Legacy, Spike Feed, our podcast. I think Higher Standards is a Standard podcast. Master of Modern is a Modern podcast. Like, you have podcasters, streamers. You have streamers that love to stream. I think Sean McLaren streams Modern all the time. You can definitely reach out to the people that are creating content for your game. You have them have sponsored content that people will want to watch. You can push that. Just like you can push the Pro Tour, you can push that content as well. So that's the things that I think Wizards can do to change things outside of that. That's kind of it. That's my huge broad thoughts on Modern and the ban list. I really believe that making decks like Scapeshift, Jeskai, Jund, Pod, bringing those back into the format with things like Dredge, Infect, Death Shadow, Aggro, Burn, these hyper aggressive decks, um, and even improving things like Storm and Ad Nauseum is good for the format. I think that it is good. I don't think it's good for the Pro Tour. I don't think that they should ever bring that back. But I do think it's good for the format. And like the thing that people love about this format is they get to play with these old powerful cards. So let them play with old powerful cards. Thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget these videos are on Pure MTGO and MTGO Traders every week. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel where you can listen to my podcast. Both of them as soon as we can make that available. You can also subscribe on iTunes. And you can check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/ccmtg to become a patron and see more awesome content like this. I'm very passionate about this. I hope you guys all enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys all next week. So we're going to take a drink. We're going to get going.